This is owner financing success. I mean, there's different ways you can do this. Um, this is the way I do it because it works for us, for me, and others do it differently, and that may work for them, and that's fine. But what I want you to do is just kind of take what we're doing here. And if you're in the membership, you kind of already know some of the stuff that we do and the ways we do it and why we do it, because why is very important. And I just want you to model it and make it your own. Okay. And what we're going to talk about, this is a mini workshop. I've kind of condensed this out of a lot of, actually out of decades worth of things that we learned, most of it from trial and error and school of hard knocks. But this has really streamlined it and made it simple. What we're going to start off, what we're going to talk about too is unit level economics. This is something that I learned through one of my coach's partners. This is actually from Adam Coffey, who combines a lot of businesses together. And the whole idea is to get it right on the small level, with the small deals, like we kind of talk about it. I've talked about it in some of my books and things like that, but in some of our trainings. You get it right on the small level and you can scale this up to any size you want. So I'm going to show you just a couple of ways we do that today. Okay, disclaimer, I'm not giving you any legal advice, financial advice, anything like that. But this is what works for me, and I want you to take this and learn from it. All right, these are based on principles actually out of my book, Landlord Pennies to Banker Dollars, which I wrote, I don't know, about 5 years ago. This is actually, we've been refining that and working on this. So we're kind of updating what we're doing, and we do have that in the membership that we've talked about, our 1 year program that you're in, Eric, and a few others here. But this is what we do. If you want some free resources, there's a couple websites that I do have up here, requickstart.com. It's got some things on there, just some basic things and some networking things, because I always like to invite you to our Friday group, because that's where a lot of deals are done. A lot of people find out things. And then a link to john.com. That's something we put together not too long ago that makes it easy access to also get a hold of me or anything that you may need. No cost. So my influencers, as you may know, Robert Allen, he's written the foreword for my book, Secrets of a Dealionaire. He's has 5 #1 New York Times best-selling books. I learned a lot of things from him. He wrote the original book, Nothing Down. If you see the challenge over here, if you don't have that, I know it's on the STLREIA website. If you don't have that, though, he has given me this is a book he wrote right here in St. Louis. He came here with Tom Painter, and he was actually the coach. And they took people out of the unemployment line and showed them, they actually took 3 people, and they really had to narrow it down to get the right people, but they actually worked with them and showed how they made money within 90 days, never to be set foot in the unemployment line again. I have a special copy of this book that I do have available on the website there that has extra footnotes and things that Bob put in there. So this is really, really good. If you don't, if you have the original one, that's a good book. But if you don't have this, I really encourage you to get that. It does take a little bit of time to go through it, but it's really well worth it. And the other influencer I have here, there's been several, but was my mother. And one of the things that she taught me and instilled is to leave others better than they found you, because people are finding you and you're not necessarily finding them all the time. So that's just something that I take with me today. Okay, unit level economics. Okay, let's talk about this a little bit. First of all, I want you to start small, and I'm going to show you how I do that small. A lot of people, what they'll say is, after I have a few deals, and I can hire some other people to work with me, and once I have enough money come in, I can do that. That's really not how it works. The best way I found, because I kind of thought that too, I started accumulating properties. I ran into a guy in his 80s. I don't know, this is several years ago, that had over 500 rental properties, and I said, oh, I want to be like him. So I started accumulating properties and thinking rental is the way to go, landlord tenant, which, there's ways to do that and it works okay. But what happened was, once we got up to 36 properties, and now they call them doors, so I don't know how many doors that would have been, but I had about half of them managed by a management company and half of them I did myself. to learn, and it was just too overwhelming. And you still got tenants, and you got a lot of things that you have to deal with. So that's one reason that I'm showing you this today, because we're going to show you things, a different way to do this here. But I want you to start small. That's the first key with the unit level economics. Get it right in the small. The second thing is, and I talk about this a lot, but keep it simple, really simple. Like I say, kissers. In the real estate business, and I came from a mortgage background. Everybody likes to complicate things. They use abbreviations and things, and this comes across to your clients and your customers the same way. You don't want to act like you're better than them or you know more. You want to explain it on an easy level for everybody to understand, but you want to keep it simple, really simple. We'll talk about some of the paperwork here in a few minutes on the way we do that, because the paperwork can be overwhelming for all of us. Most of us don't even read that. I don't know, you've probably, closed on a loan before, went to a title company. As you know, there might be 30 or 50 or 60 documents. Sometimes I've seen crazy amount. And I don't know about you, but I've never read all the way through them. I've skimmed through them a few times, and I've had people start to read some of it when I was on the other side of the table, but they just don't do it. So you really want to keep it simple so everybody understands stuff. You don't want to wait until there's a friction point to then go through the paperwork. Do it right up front. Other thing, the third part of the unit level economics that we're going to talk about today is strategize to win-win-win. There's always at least three people or three parties involved in every situation, in every deal. And you want to make sure everybody wins, because if one person doesn't win, it's not a good deal. You want to go in there with the intentions of everyone winning. All right, short-term gain versus long-term income. They used to say, cash is king is what we used to hear, but really your long-term income, and that's your cash flow. I'd say cash flow is queen, and that to me is more important in the long run, because I used to sell everything right away, did lots of these little deals like this, and we'd make money, but then they're just gone. The long-term income, which is what we're kind of talking about today, which I found is a lot better. So I just like to say cash flow is queen. I'm into a lot of quotes. Bruce Lee is one of my favorites on some of the things. He had unfortunately a short life, but he had a lot of good things that he said before. Long-term consistency trumps short-term intensity, which I believe 100%. And the other thing he said that I really relate to is, I fear not the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks once, but I fear the man who practiced one kick 10,000 times. And that's what I want to kind of talk to you about today a little bit, is get it right on the small level, and you can apply this as you scale up your business. All right, well, let's talk about some of the problems with being a landlord. I mean, people talk about toilets a lot. That's really not ever been my biggest thing, but that's something that people relate to, because you always hear kind of some of that stuff. But the biggest problem is tenants. There's a friction point between landlords and tenants. What's the problem? You got to rent it. You got to get the house ready. There's maintenance, ongoing maintenance. There's a lot of things you don't count on. You might be real tight on your cash flow. And I know I've had a lot of them where I'm making $300 or $500 a month, and that's great, except when there's a major repair. I talked to somebody not too long ago. The heater went out on, and it's a $10,000 fix. And then where's your $300 a month? How long does that take to make that up? You got, there's people that don't pay. You got zoning laws, you got pets, you got neighbor problems, you got all kinds of stuff. Maybe you had a different strategy. One of my strategies was long-term cash flow. Well, it doesn't always work that way. Well, what can you do about that? Look at this. Let me just show you, starting off on little deals. This is how I started off. And this is what I want you to take away today. The first critical element, I call it, is to start small. Now, these are 4 lots right here. These are the actual lots I bought. And I combined them. Okay, that's one of the strategies that we talk about in our membership, though. I just show you how to. This was bought. These are 4 lots I bought over the counter. That's what OTC stands for back taxes. Now, over the counter, Some counties in Missouri, and there are places, other places in the country you can do this with, not all of them, about half of them you can do this with. You can buy them over the counter. That means they did not sell at the tax sale. If you want to buy liens and things like that at the tax sale, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a whole different strategy. But this is something that I like to do because they're sitting there. Okay. All four of these lots, I paid $174 for. Okay, that's it. And what I did is I put these up for sale. I sold them for, combined them all. You know, one of the strategies that you may have, you know, I've written about and we work on is we combine lots when we see them like that. Another one is to buy them all together and separate them. That's another strategy that we also use. But this one here, we combine them. $13,999 is what I put it up for sale for. $139 a month and 0% interest. We'll talk more about that in a little bit, but 0%, I like to use simple math. This particular guy gave me $139 down. I usually, when I advertise, you know, I just say low down. Let's see what they got to work with. This guy had a good cash flow. He's retired military, and it worked right within his budget. And I found a lot of people like this over the years. They want to, you know, they have a little bit of money to work with. They're on a fixed income, but they may not have, you know, 20% or 30% to put down necessarily. I'm okay with this. I generally charge $199 processing amount that we do too. This particular one, I did not do that on. I usually do, but this one, after talking to the guy, this one made sense. So he gave me $139 down, and then he's going to pay $139 a month. Well, that goes on for 99.71 months or 8.3 years. As you could see, after 2 months, everything is good. Now this, you know, most people will pay these off when you talk to them like that. Not everybody does, and if they don't, I don't want anybody not to succeed. But if they don't, it's very simple. Right in my paperwork, which I'll show you in a minute here, it says after 3 months you agree to voluntarily give it back, and I have had some over the years to do that, but most do not. Okay. And so this one here, this is what I want you to look at. Start really small. This is how I started doing the owner financing. It was before I figured this out in my rental properties, and I'll show you one of them in a minute. The second critical element in owner financing is when you come to design your deals. Okay. And the thing, you know, and I talk about this a lot, but keep it simple, really simple, especially with your paperwork. And there's ways that we do that and things that we've refined over the years to make it even simpler. And I'm constantly working on that. In fact, I just updated some things this past week in the paperwork that I'm going to be implementing here in the next with my next deal, actually. Simple documents to run your business. Don't have the 30 pages and all that, but there are some critical things that you do need in your documents. First one is I use actually a contract for deed. And now on that deal that I just showed you, this is it. This is my paperwork right here. It simply says that you're going to pay this much starting on this date, and how much the total amount is. Now, one of the things that I do, and you can, you know, I usually have a cash price and a financing price because we use 0% interest. I'll explain more about that in a minute here with the next one we're going to look at. But one of the things that I do is I will always give them an option at any time somebody wants to pay off their property. I'll give them 10% off of the balance or the original cash price, whichever they choose. So that's one of the options that I give them, and I don't always, but I like to give it to them. And I'll tell you, most people do not exercise that. When they do take the 10% off, it's usually when they only owe, you know, maybe a couple $1,000 or even a couple $100, so they do not get a big discount, which kind of surprises me because I used to always send them out once a year. When I would send the tax information out, I would send them an option. Hey, if you pay it off now, it's only going to be, you know, so, you know, X number of dollars. But most people don't exercise it, but that's a nice option to have. But this is my simple paperwork right here. The other part that I have on these little properties like that is this is our, it's a receipt. And if you're in the membership, you know, we don't call them receipts, we call them confirmations. Just like I don't call the contract a contract, we call it an agreement. And the stuff, it's very psychological why I call things the way we do and the way we do stuff here is because Just going back to, well, for example of like my mother, she used to always say, "Oh, don't sign the contract unless you have somebody look at it, somebody that knows what they're doing." Well, that's really good advice. But what I've done over the years is we call these agreements, even though it's a contract, it's an agreement, and we just have them authorize the agreement. They're not signing a contract, even though they are signing a contract. We are authorizing the agreement. So that's the way we do that. So it's very psychological. It's not always what you say; it's how you say it. So that's how well we do things here. This right here, one reason I like to do the with the confirmation here, one reason I like to do the 0% interest. It's simple math, and we'll go over some more details on why this works here in just a minute here. Right. And I say it's the second critical element in owner financing, but it should be in every industry, but keep it simple, really simple. That is a huge key. All right, now let's look at one of the rental homes that I did here. Okay, this home, it's a 4-bedroom, 2-bath, single family resident. We originally bought this house for $55,000 and put $28,000 into it to fix it up. I mean, it was, there was a lot of stuff going on with that. And anyway, so then it was a great rental. And over the years, we added about a little over $24,000 in repairs. We had a tornado one time that blew the roof off the outhouse there, the barn, slash garage. We had there's some other things. The septic, there was about $10 or $12,000 in septic we had to do. Just typical rental house. This was a good rental property for many years at $650 to $695 a month. That's consistently what we got. Nowadays, it was a couple of years ago, we'd have a little bit more now because things have changed a little bit, but you always had the repairs, insurance, and taxes. We had good renters. I think we had about maybe 4 renters over the period of about a 6-year period, 7-year period, which was fine. But every time they move out, you have to paint everything. You got to update the carpets. There's just stuff. If you have any rental properties or you're a landlord or even a tenant, you'll kind of know comes with the territory. And so when the last person moved out, I had a friend of mine who's a realtor, gave me a BPO, a broker's price opinion, I think is what that actually stands for. Again, that goes back with your initials, which trying to simplify things. But she said, well, I think we could get 83,000 for it, but you need to put about 10,000 into it in repairs. There were some things going on with plumbing and some of the bedrooms. They had animals and it's just a lot of things happened. I mean, there was a lot of things, but then that did not include, realtor commission. So we were going to have that, and I don't know what we ended up netting out of that. It just didn't sound like a good deal. But my partner, who was my father, was getting older, and we just didn't, we were just tired of renting a thing. So what I did is I took some of the things that I've been putting together on the smaller deals, like I just showed you, and we started applying these here. So what we did on this one right here, I said, well, I said, Angela, let's do this. Let's try to advertise this at $119,900 cash as is, or $199,900, and I'll finance it at 0% interest, which is at $797 per month. And you see the $797, and we've talked about that. That's psychological too with the numbers there, which is that's another story. But there are reasons why we do it like this. And it took a while. And what I did and what I've learned to do too is I have a professional, such as my friend here that did this, and she had managed some rental properties for us in that area. I would have her screen the people, okay, and take the applications and show the house. It took probably about a month for her to go through applications. And then I let them send them to me. And of course, I make the final decision. And that's what I want you to do, is use people around you. But then when it's all said and done, you do this yourself, because you have to make the final decision. Now, what I've found too is most of the people that has worked out really well for me since I've started doing this strategy is the ones that the professionals say, I would not rent to this person. Okay. Me coming from a mortgage background, we work with a lot of people with bad credit and just different things. And what I found is to look and see. You have to kind of look beyond, beyond what it says on paper and see what the reasons for that is. And what I found is I want happy homeowners. I want somebody that wants to take care of their family. Most of the people that they say they would not rent to, I call them kind of second chance people. They've already had some bumps, but they care about their families or their situations, and they actually want to do better for them. This particular one, it took us about a month to get somebody that looked like they qualified. The guy was in construction, so he was able to do some of the stuff. And actually, this house looks pretty decent now. We were there. I haven't seen it in many years until we were updating the insurance, and they couldn't get a good picture. So we went out there. He's put a pool in, and I mean, they've really made this place a nice place. But they're happy homeowners. I mean, they got flowers growing, and they have a lot of plants. There's fruit trees. There's a lot of nice stuff in their yard here. But so they took the option of, and what they did is typically when you have a professional show the house for you and take the applications, they will keep the first month. Okay, that's usually their fee, and there may be some others. It depends on who you use, but that's what happened. So, and we paid Angela actually the first 2 months. That's what the guy put down. I just gave that to her as her fee for doing that, because I was going to take over the payments now, and she was not going to have to manage it. So that's a little different. Okay, and here's what the people actually did. After the first year, they paid their $797, but then the taxes come due. Okay, they did not want to pay the taxes every year, because the first year, and taxes, of course, they always come at the end of the year. And some people have, with the holidays, you got Christmas, and there's extra expenses. You might have some travel expenses. There's just different things going on. So they decided to update this to 850, which is what they're still doing, and that includes the taxes. That does not include the insurance. But this goes on for 20 years. So, 250 months is a pretty long time. And what that did is now all of a sudden, I do not have all the maintenance, because I've got a homeowner taking care of the home, even though I still own this, because we do not transfer the deed until we're satisfied. That's one of the techniques and the strategies that we use with our strategy here. Okay, well, why would anybody pay more than rent? Because as you can see, that was like $100 more than what we were getting for rent. Well, there's lots of reasons. Okay, this is a great way to buy a home for those starting out in life. Okay, now that's where you'll have to have your screener do a little bit more due diligence, because a lot of people, if it's their first house, their first deal, you want to look, a little bit behind the scenes and kind of see what's really going on here. And I kind of talked about what I call second chance people restarting out in life. These are some of my the best people I've ever had, the happy homeowners, because they want to do better. And a lot of them may have had some trouble in their life. I've had a lot of people who got in trouble with the law and different things like that maybe I wouldn't have looked at as a good renter, but they're wanting to do good now and take care of their families. This is what I found, but you've got to kind of look behind the scenes a little bit to find this. This is huge. Bad or no credit. There's a lot of things that happen to good people, and some people not so good, but there's a lot of things that happen. When I was a mortgage broker, we worked a lot with people on their credit. I had a whole program we put together on how to do this to get people in line to buy a house. We used to, we work with people sometimes as much as 2 or 3 years. In fact, I wrote my book, Secrets Those Credit Doctors Don't Want You to Know. If you don't have a copy of that, let me know, and I'll be happy to give you a copy of that. I give you a PDF copy, and it explains everything you need to know. The credit doctors used to drive me insane. They still do when I see that stuff, because they're not really, and I only have one question anytime I see them. And I always say this is, what is one thing you could do for my credit that I cannot do myself? And they can never answer that, because there's not one thing. One guy one time told me, well, it's something that I'll do that you won't do. He was the only one ever being honest with me, because most of them aren't even honest about it. But that's credit happens. I mean, you might have some medical bills. There's just a lot of things that happen. And so that's something to consider, but see why. What is the reason they have bad credit? Now, if they have 5 foreclosures, that's a different story. I've had people, though, that were really good people that had 1 foreclosure. They had a bad divorce, and a lot of things happen. And it's been a couple of years, and they've, redone some stuff. So you have to look, you just have to look and see what the real situation is. And this causes a lot of problems too. Recent divorce, death, there's disasters of all kinds. I mean, there's just a lot of things that happen, and you just have to look, like I said, a little bit beyond the scenes a little bit. They don't qualify for traditional financing. This is big now too, because a lot of these banks have tightened up their belts, and there's things that are a little bit more, difficult for people to get. Job history is too short. That kind of includes in that. Don't have the 20% to put down, sometimes even more, especially if you're, if you're a investor looking to put, buy some rental properties and things. A lot of people now have to put down as much as 30% or even more. I've seen bigger, big players doing this now with some of the deals they're doing, because they just, once you have a track record, it might work a little bit. And there are hard money lenders and other ways you can do it. But for somebody that just wants to buy a house, which is what we're talking about here, they may not have enough money to put down. And don't have closing costs. Of course, you buy things traditionally, you're going to have other costs too. You're going to have escrows, extras, and just all kinds of things. And then maybe the banks just don't like you. Okay. So let's look at how I did this house, though, the one I just showed you, the rental house. Okay, let's compare this with just some, let's say just some traditional loans. They're typically, and this is what we'll mostly hear about, is 30 and 15-year loans. Okay. If you take an 8.5% loan over 30 years, which is 360 months at the original 119.9, 8.5%, that's going to give you principal and interest of 921.93, and you're going to pay back a total of $331,893.82. That's 2.7 times what you borrowed as far as the principal goes. Okay, and that's just a typical loan. That's probably right in line. A couple years ago, it was a little bit better because the rates were better. I don't know what's going to happen in the future, and but this is what we got based on today's rates. Now, let's say you're what we used to call subprime borrower, but you can't get, you're not an A borrower. 10%. You take that over your same 30-year period, that's $1,052.21 principal and interest. And that's 378, 794 and 99 cents. That's about a little over it's about 3.1 times what you borrowed. So that's how interest works, compounded interest. Now, let's even break this down a little bit. Let's say that maybe have a bigger down payment or something, and that's of course all considered, and what's your credit score. I mean, there's a lot of factors that go in there, but let's say you have a 5.75% rate over 15-year loan. Let's just take it that way. Your payment would be $995.66. And again, this is principal and interest, which comes to a total of $179,219.10. That does not include your taxes and insurance, which those are variable, so you can't really include that anyway. And those do adjust from time to time. Okay, well, let's look at our way, the way we do it here. Okay, taking that same 199.9, which is the option they chose, okay, because that's what they agreed to pay over the lifetime. The other ones, they agreed to pay those other amounts. Over the 250 months, it's $797 principal and interest. That's not counting the taxes I showed you earlier. They're going to pay back the 199.9. This is a 20-year, 20.9 years. So, and our cash flow pretty much is everything they pay us, because we are not paying any repairs. We do keep our insurance in effect, but they're paying the taxes. So this is this is how we do it. Of course, you might be able to get a little favorable if you have money to put down, and maybe you want to do that. But of course, I give them the option. You want to refinance and pay me off at any time? That's great. So that's how it works. And if somebody does move out, which I've had a few of them do that for different reasons. We had a guy whose mother died. He was from Haiti originally. He moved back to take care of his siblings. He left the house broom swept with new appliances in there. I mean, this is just a whole different set of people, and it's a whole different thing that you're dealing with, rather than the friction points of the landlord-tenant relationship. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, and I did it for years. But this is why we do this, because you just get different people. It's just a whole different mindset. And then that brings us to our third critical element in the owner financing, and that's what I call win-win-win. There's always at least three parties that win. In like the example the first one I showed you, the little deals, buying the things for back taxes, the county wins because the back taxes are paid and it's off their books. And the future taxes will be paid. Now that, of course, the county, the counties, our tax dollars don't always go for everything that we think is great, but there's a lot of good things they do. Drive down the road, you're using tax dollars driving on the road. If you go to parks, there's sidewalks there's playground equipment, things like it goes on and on. There's a lot of good that comes out of that. So that's one winner right there. The person buying it was a winner too, because he bought a piece of property that he didn't know he could buy for only $139 a month and didn't have to put a big down payment on. And I was willing to finance it. He got a really nice piece of property on something that he could use possibly to retire on, recreation. I don't know. There's many reasons why people do that. Then when you design your deals, okay, we talked a little bit about the contract for deed, which we call agreements. But when you make your agreements, you want to make them in the favor of everyone winning. When you're doing the houses, there are a couple more documents that I add, and that's an authorization to release information. You'll need to do the lead-based paint poisoning notification, just the disclosure, and you also want to be an additional insured on their insurance in addition to your own. So that's just really the only other paperwork that I add, other than we showed the confirmation, which is the receipt, but that's a confirmation of what the money they send you every month. And then also when you're making up your terms, make sure that that's a win-win-win too. And of course you're going to win too. You want to do your marketing and your ads, everything you do, you just want to go in there with a good intention of everyone coming out ahead. Because if one person doesn't win, I found it's best not to do that. And you don't want to have anything without good intentions. And when you're collecting your cash, okay, your money, however you do it. I've had people, not so much now because they're pretty much everything's out there with Square and and PayPal and some of the other things. But I had people a couple of years ago would say, well, do you accept Pop Money? Do you accept Venmo? Even though I may at the time never heard of them, I always just tell people, of course I do. I accept it any way you want to give it to me, and I'll figure out how to do it. So what works for you? That's another win in their court, but also in yours. And you want to think, and this is something that I learned along the way too, is who else wins when I win? Okay. Of course, you want to win. You're the ultimate winner by the way you're putting this together, but there are a lot of people that must win also, a lot of parties. So that's what I call a third critical element in the owner financing is everybody must win. So I want you to, if nothing else, take away this with you today, win, win, win. All right. And I'm going to make one prediction for you personally here. First, when you start small. And second, kissers, keep it simple, really simple. And third, you strategize to win, 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 which we just talked about. You will succeed more often. So, you may think the grass is greener on the other side, but if you just take the time to water your own grass, it will be just as green. And that's what I've done with my rental properties, but I started off small with the OTC properties like I showed you here. But this is what we do on everything now. What I'm showing you right here is the way we craft and design all our deals, keeping it simple, really simple, and win, win, win. If you'd like to have a copy of the slides as my gift to use as a blueprint, I'd be happy to give them to you. I also can send you some information on our Ultimate Freedom one-year membership if you want. I know some of you already are in this right here. Just send me an email. That's simple. thedealionaire@gmail.com.